here. I'm going to ask you both to stand for a second and put you on the spot. We, of course, saw them in the video, which was great to see. But these two have done so much. They're really the engine for the Hawkinson Fund, from raising funds, communicating to donors, communicating to the wider community, serving on the committees, the scholarship selection committees, serving on the honorary award-winning committees, just doing all the work to make this legacy of Pastor Hawkinson continue to live on. And we are grateful for all that you have done and continue to do with this work. And so at this time, I'm going to call on Stan to present the 2024 scholarships.
I'm Stan Jacobson, the chair of the Hawkinson Fund for Peace and Justice, and I'm delighted today to be presenting 5 scholarships. We awarded the first scholarship for $1,000 in 1989, but inflation has increased the cost of higher education by more than 5 times, and so today we will be presenting scholarships in the amounts of $5,000 for 4 of the students and an additional $2,500 for one of the students. Including today's scholarships, the Hawkinson Fund has awarded $424,000 to 165 students over the last 35 years. This is something of an achievement, but far more important is what those students have done in the last 35 years, and what the students receiving the scholarship today will do for the next 35 years. If you haven't seen the Hawkinson scholarships, there were some available, Hawkinson newsletter, I knew I was going to do that. Hawkinson newsletters were available at the front, and they're also available here and downstairs. I'm going to highlight them because Rai was referring to telling stories. And this is what the newsletters are all about. What we do is we lift up the stories of the scholarship recipients and of the honorary award recipients precisely because one of our major objectives is to publicize these stories to provide models for other people to say, oh, if those people can do that, maybe I can step in and do my part as well. That's the driving force behind the. And we have this one featuring Dan and Margaret. We have this one featuring award winners picture was taken back in 2008. So there's like 16 different award winners here. Unfortunately, many of them passed since then. And this one from the 3rd year ago was from Father Burry, who's seated up here in the front, and he was our honorary award winner 3 years ago. Maybe I can draw this over. Thank you, Wayne. So the stories of both scholarship winners and the honorary award winners, you can read more about them in the newsletters, and we have lots of copies. I always wonder how many copies to make every year, and so far I've overshot, so we need extra copies. Please take 2 or 3 home. Some of the stories that you will read about, for example, in this one, we're talking about a man named Father John Mary Lugamois, a notable name, John Mary Lugamois, who used his scholarship in 2006 to start a school in Uganda, now serving 700 students, and the criteria for getting into the school is your parents died from AIDS. And then there's Mary Maker, who used her scholarship 3 years ago to provide opportunities for other students like herself who came from the Kakuma refugee camp in northwest Kenya to the United States, Canada, and Europe to attend college. And the program, of course, is funded to provide this ability. Mary has been named an official United Nations Goodwill Ambassador after graduating from St. Olaf College last year. There are more than a dozen former Hawkinson scholars who are working today to improve healthcare access for disadvantaged groups in the United States and around the world. Last year's newsletter, this is the one with the many different people being shown here, and at the last 3 pages of it, we have listed every one of the 160 scholars and their interests at the time that they got the scholarship. I'm mentioning that because as you go down the list, you'll see that there's a lot of cross-sectional interests. People, like I mentioned just now, healthcare, making sure that healthcare is available to all people everywhere throughout the world is a problem in the United States and, of course, all around the world. The one name that is a popular name, if you read People magazine, that you might recognize in that list of 160 is Denai Guerrera, who received a Hawkinson Scholarship in 1999 and went on to a career in film. She starred in the Black Panther movies and also the Walking Dead TV series. But as you might expect from a Hawkinson scholar, she didn't stop there. She has written a Broadway play that was nominated for a Tony Award. She has co-founded an arts education program in Zimbabwe, and she started an organization called Love Our Girls to focus on challenges faced by girls and women everywhere. And she was named a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador in 2018 to advocate for women and the end of poverty. I should also note that 6 Hawkinson scholars were attending United Seminary when they received the Hawkinson scholarships. This included 3 people who were firsts. For example, the very first Hawkinson scholarship went to a woman named Nancy Anderson in 1989, who was then attending United. And the first Hawkinson scholarship to be awarded to a man went to Casey Vanderbent in 1998, also while attending United. And he is currently serving as an interim pastor at the First Presbyterian Church in Red Wing, although he's actually an ordained congregational minister. And then the first of only 2 Grace Church members who have received these scholarships. The first one was Matthew Bersago Braley in 2003. He's now a professor of ethics at Viterbo University in La Crosse, and in 2020 he was named Viterbo's Teacher of the Year for that year. And he focuses on ethics. And the background that we spotlighted him for as a Hawkinson Fund certainly indicated to us that this would be a primary interest of his. On the honorary award side, we've had previous members of the church who have also received honorary awards. However, the one I'd like to point out, Anita Hill is a member of Grace Church, and she received a honorary award in 2015 for helping to provide leadership so that the Lutheran Church, the ELCA, would open its rosters to lesbian and gays. And she earned a master's degree from United as well. At this point, if there are any former Hawkinson scholars who are here today, would you please stand to be recognized? And members of the Hawkinson Scholarship Selection Committee are in the room. I know at least one of them is in Guatemala right now, but Tom must be out tending the parking lot still. Mike, there's Tom, there's Mike. Could you stand up, please? Thank you. And while I'm at it, former recipients of honorary award winners. So we have a couple here. Could you stand up, please, Pastor? Steve Clemens, behind them, Anita, Father Burley. Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, when selecting students, we look at the benefits to society from what the students have done and will do to change the world. We aim to provide financial help and also recognition and encouragement. As the Hawkinson scholar from 2005, Christy Rendall, mentioned in the video a couple minutes ago. Unpack that word encouragement and you see the word courage. The Hawkinson Fund selects students who have shown a personal commitment to peace and justice, often at considerable personal risk. The common theme that unites this year's group of Hawkinson scholars is courage. It takes courage to expose government officials who abuse their power by forcibly taking land to enrich foreign investors in Vietnam. It takes courage to overturn traditional divorce practices that harm women in Hmong society. It takes courage to defend ethnic minorities against the oppressive military junta in Myanmar. It takes courage to help homeless people reconstruct their lives on the streets of St. Paul. And it takes courage to write stories about police violence against civilians and to expose baby trading black markets in Nigeria. These are the people that you will meet today, the people whose courageous commitment to justice will be making a difference around the world for decades to come. This is how the Hawkinson Fund uses your donations. Could you join me, please? Good, perfect. Just switch sides. There you go. Natalie, yeah. And then once I give you something, you can just sit down and then we'll stand up. Okay. So, Mi Nguyen, the first person is from Vietnam. She graduated last year as valedictorian from the National Economic University in Hanoi, which really ticked off the men in the class. Now she's in her first year as PhD student here at the University of Minnesota. A few minutes ago, the video reminded us that Vince Hawkinson was an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War. 30 years after the Vietnam War ended, Mi Nguyen was born in Hanoi into a family whose members suffered and died from Agent Orange. Mi Nguyen's current research seeks to educate people about economic systems so that further injustice and violence can be avoided. Please read her essay in the Hawkinson newsletter from this year, titled, "Is War Inevitable?" So it is a mixture with sadness and pride that I present this scholarship from the Hawkinson Fund to Ha Mi Nguyen. I'll read the award for you. I'm going to read a little section for everybody, but I'll read the whole award on the first round. It says Scholarship Award, the Hawkinson Fund for Peace and Justice at Grace Church, University Lutheran Church, hereby designates Ha Mi Nguyen as a 2024 Hawkinson Scholar in recognition of her commitment to promote peace and justice in her community and throughout the world. We especially recognize her efforts to expose flaws in current economic systems and, through education of common people, prepare for a more just, inclusive future for all Vietnamese people. Congratulations. The American War in Vietnam also provided the occasion for Hmong people to come to America and ultimately settle here in Minnesota. Mo Lee knows about this intimately as she grew up in a refugee camp in eastern Thailand. She is also pursuing a PhD in sociology at the university. She used her scholarship to travel to Thailand this August to respond to the traditional Hmong practice of ostracizing women who become divorced. Also, I encourage you to read her fascinating story in the Hawkinson newsletter. The award plaque reads, "In recognition of her commitment to peace and promoting peace and justice in her community and throughout the world, we especially recognize her efforts to combat gender-based violence by encouraging Hmong youth to challenge traditional misogynistic beliefs and practices." Congratulations. Now we move from Vietnam and eastern Thailand over to the western border of Thailand. Here are other refugee camps populated by people who come from Myanmar, having fled their homes to escape internal violence and oppression by the ruling military junta. Phothoyoki King knows that side of Thailand quite well, having fled from Myanmar with his parents about 15 years ago. He came to Minnesota with his mother just 3 years ago. Sadly, his mother died a year later, and his father remains in Thailand. Phothoyoki graduated last spring from Century College and now attends Metropolitan State University. I was astounded to learn that in coming to Minnesota, Phothoyoki joined 17,000 Karen and Burmese refugees now living in Minnesota's 4th Congressional District, that's St. Paul and eastward. 17,000. While attending school in Thailand, Phothoyoki worked for several years in the refugee camps to create safe places for new arrivals. He became a leader and an organizer and has become committed to using collective action to protect the rights of ethnic minorities. Congratulations. Obviously, the Hawkinson Fund is open to students from around the world. But just as Vince Hawkinson, if he were alive today, would rail against American dollars funding wars in Ukraine and Palestine, we in America live in a glass house when it comes to how people of color, especially women, are treated right here. Frankly, I stand in awe of the courage it takes just to go to work every day for Natalie. Natalie Gasser is studying for an MSW from Augsburg University, and she knows very well the dangers and special needs of those ordinary people who find themselves without a place to call home. For the last 4 years, Natalie has worked on the streets of St. Paul with homeless individuals, including those who struggle with mental health and substance use disorders. Natalie had given up on traditional religious studies when she responded to a job posting to work in a homeless shelter. She was mentored by a man named Brett Byfield, who showed her techniques that allow her to express her innate compassion toward others in need. Working daily with people who live on the edge requires a very special person. Congratulations, Natalie. Connections with others and compassion toward others in need, along with courage, these are themes that you're hearing a lot about today. Ubuntu. Ubuntu, spelled U-B-U-N-T-U. Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a word that I learned 3 years ago from Mubanga, Kalimamu Kwento. I'll say more about Mubanga in a moment, but the word Ubuntu expresses an African way of seeing the world through our relationships with others. Ubuntu, I am only because we are. I am me only because you are you, and we are more than either of us is alone. My thinking must begin by thinking first about you, and only then can I figure out who I am and what I must do. So I must begin by asking, what is good for the community, and how can I help the stranger in need? Frances Ogamba knows something about Ubuntu. Now, Mubanga, the lady with the very long second name, Kalimamu Quento, served as the reference for Frances when Frances applied for the scholarship. They had met each other virtually during a writing competition a few years ago. Frances and Mubanga are both writers. Frances is from Nigeria, Mubanga is from Zimbabwe. They are both mothers of wonderful children. But while Mubanga will tuck her boys into bed tonight, Frances's children remain in Africa while she is studying for a MFA at the University of Minnesota. This comment about Frances missing her children is not flippant. Any mother knows the heart-wrenching courage required to say goodbye to young children, even for a short time, all the less years. The key to most everything that Frances writes about is her profound ability to feel and write about the sense of dislocation when Ubuntu is broken, when relationships between people need to be mended. This idea jumps right out at you when you think about the title of her short story that won the inaugural Kalahari Short Story Prize. The title is My Husband's Wife. Not my husband, not me, my husband's wife. Who is that other woman, and what broken relationship is there? The same dislocation when Ubuntu is broken can be seen in her essay that won the Diana Woods Award for nonfiction. Its title is, Here's to the Breed of Flying Hens. In this essay, Frances begins with the family that she left behind in Africa, but then shifts from her own pain to the sacrifices of others even generations apart. Rather than wallow in self-pity, Frances now focuses her attention on the many aspiring writers in Africa who haven't had the privilege to travel to America, get paid to study or to write, maybe even have the luxury of having 24 hours electricity available, unless you live in North Carolina or Florida, like my family does. She has established a writer's workshop to help those left behind in Africa so that they can write the stories and tell what really happened and thereby correct the false historical records left by European colonizers of Africa. If Ubuntu can help Africans overcome the legacy of European colonization, then surely that philosophy can help us here in America today. Frances is our top scholar this year, designated as the Jacobson Scholar. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out, and thank you to my friends and family who are back home, staying up despite the different time zones. Thank you so much. This means a lot to me. I am truly honored to be a 2024 recipient of the Hawkinson Fund for Peace and Justice. My deepest gratitude goes to the Hawkinson Fund contributors, including the generous support from Grace Church's annual benevolence gifts. My name is Frances Ogamba, a fiction writer and essayist. I am currently completing my MFA in creative writing at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. I tell stories because storytelling is like placing our hands on different body parts of the world and asking where it hurts. We can attest to the fact that the world is such a difficult place to live in right now because it hurts everywhere. From Nigeria to Ukraine, from Somalia to Palestine, from Lebanon to North Carolina to Florida. It hurts in the justice system, in healthcare, in gender inequality, in inequitable access to housing. Through stories, we document our efforts on the battlefront against imperialism, violence against individuals living with disability, police brutality, and human trafficking. Our stories of today become archives for the future generation, a map to navigate and correct their own present. I co-founded Idembeka Creative Writing Workshop, not only to empower African writers who have no access to fully funded writing programs, but to invite more voices to tell Africa's stories, which I alone cannot tell. Many studies and books on Africa always seem to have completed before the researchers meet Africa for the first time. As a result, Africa's story is often told by those who write it without an iota of understanding. I am committed to changing that narrative by encouraging more voices because stories will never be enough. In my earliest engagements with advocacy, I invested in the preservation of human life and the environment. To preserve life, I worked with a mental health awareness initiative and reached out to people contemplating suicide through phone calls. To preserve the environment, I wrote letters to the government calling their attention to the harmful activities of illegal oil refineries in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. These phone calls and letters were all stories, stories of courage and hope, stories revealing the pain and crumbling health of a people inbreathing polluted air. Our gathering today is a celebration of storytelling because it is through stories that we can share the work we have done and inspire a kinder world. It is through language and stories that we protest and advocate for justice and peace in a world cracking in many places. I am inspired by the work and advocacy of the past and present recipients of the Hawkinson Fund. This year we have Potayoke King, who advocates for the rights of ethnic minorities in Thai Burmese communities. Maosi Lee, who guides young Hmong women to reclaim their personhood. Hami Wing, who helps underprivileged groups unlock their power by better understanding their rights. And Natalie Gessa, who engages with homeless individuals who struggle with substance use disorders. These individuals, I am now lucky to call peers, are patching the world's cracks, giving back power to those who cannot negotiate due to lack of language. During my interview with the Hawkinson Fund team, I asked them what they have learned about humanity, especially in a world that insists on difference and boundaries and partitions. They replied, "The problems of the world are just the same. We are rocked by the same anxieties and insecurities, the same sickness and pain and loss, the same laughter and joy and hope, the same tears. When our bodies bruise, we all bleed. We are the same water boiling in a pot, leaves on different branches of the same tree. If you look in the core of our humanness, you will find us all the same." The Igbo word for love is ifunanya. The literal translation is to see with the eye. However, seeing here transcends sight. Ifunanya is to behold another human using all 5 senses, especially the sense of hearing. Of the 5 senses, hearing is the most pervasive. Sight is always the perception from a particular angle, but sound is the perception able to penetrate beneath the surface. To see others with the eye is to see them with greater clarity, to hear them, to understand them, which is ultimately to love them. As occupants of a world conceived of a whole, in which all things are linked together, I hope that we all continue seeing others with the eye, that we see both the surface and everything else existing underneath. Thank you.
Stand up. Come around. Thank you. These are the people who are helping to achieve justice today and laying the groundwork for peace for tomorrow. Now I'm delighted to present Jayanthi Kyle, who tells her stories in music, and I understand shares her background with the next President of the United States.
I'm not sure what to do with that, but I think I will teach you another word. It's Kujichagulia. And Kujichagulia means that I say who I am. So I will tell you who I am. I am the daughter of a man from India and a mother who is Black and Choctaw Nation by way of Mississippi and Arkansas. So I will also say the way, the land that we're on right now, and is Minnesota, Makoche, and I want to give thanks to be here to sing on that land and to remind you that you love to sing too. I want to say thank you to all of you that just received awards. And I appreciate what you're doing here in this world. And I clapped along with everyone else. And so I hope you could hear my hands clapping. And I think that it's our job to support you in what you're doing in more ways than the award, but so we will sonically support you right now, and I want you to just luxuriate in it as you sing with us. We're gonna teach you some songs if you don't know them, or we'll remind you of a song, and we'll share that with you, because we all know how to sing together, right? That's right. And my mom, who I told you is Black and Choctaw Nation, she took me into the kitchen one day and she said, when I was a little girl, I used to have to lock arms with my friends and we would sit and say, we shall not be moved. And so I don't want you to be moved in what you're doing and what you're pursuing. So we'll sing this song to support you, and you can remember this in those times. And it goes like this. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. I hear harmonies. We shall not, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted. We shall not. We shall not. We shall. You sound so good, don't they? Think about this when you're going up against those adversities, when you're coming up against those walls, when you're thinking about the things that are coming up against you. Remember this in your heart. We shall not be moved. We are behind you. The people are behind us. We shall not be moved. We are behind you. The people are behind us. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the wall. We shall not. We shall not. We shall not. We shall not be moved. We shall not. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree. We shall not be moved. A lot of times people are remixing things, and that is really cool. I love it. But sometimes you can take an old thing and it is perfect the way that it is. And we exhibited that right now. And I do want to sing one new song by, and it's not that new, but it's by the late, recently passed Bernice Johnson Reagan from Sweet Honey in the Rock. And she sings this song, and this is also going out to you. Even though they told me sing one song, I'm just going to throw another one in there real quick. And it goes like this. Where there is light in the soul, there is beauty in the person. Where there is beauty in the person, there is harmony in the home. Where there is harmony in the home, there is honor in your nation. Where there is honor in the nation, there is peace in the world. Thank you.
The peace and justice movement has always been carried on in the streets by activists, as well as artists, poets, and musicians. The music of the movement embodies the soulful work of challenge and change for the sake of God's shalom. Thank you, Jayanthi, for your witness and your work and your song that lifts us to the work ahead. At this time, I invite forward lifelong peace and justice activist Steve Clemens for the introduction of the award recipients. Steve has lived his life as a witness to Jesus' call to peace and nonviolence, having been imprisoned by his protests for some 30-plus times over his time and his advocacy, speaking out on behalf of those who need a voice. He has been a valuable partner with the Hawkinson Fund and himself a recipient of the honorary award in 2012. Welcome, Steve.
Christine and I first met Dan and Margaret when they moved into the third-floor apartment above us shortly after we came to Minneapolis in the summer of 1990. A few years later, found Christine babysitting Annie, the oldest of their 3 children. It was Dan and Margaret who first let me know about Vincent Hawkinson and invited me to attend one of the award ceremonies many years ago. Common Harvest Farm has become what farmers call a demonstration plot, a place where one can readily see the effects of using a certain type of seed, a new method of treating the soil, a different approach to what our society calls agriculture. For the past 10 years or so, the community of St. Martin has traveled to Common Harvest just south of Osceola, Wisconsin, for their annual Spring Day of Renewal at the CSA farm, community-supported agriculture. Margaret often shares poetry. Dan talks about the soil and challenges of drought, insects, climate change. We partner with Dan and Margaret to promote a project called Sharing the Harvest to help the most diverse food bank in the metro area get deliveries of fresh organic vegetables at the Brian Coyle Center in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood of Minneapolis. When I was honored to receive this Peacemaking Award in 2012, I was becoming more and more aware of what we now call intersectionality of peacemaking, a recognition of the multitude of issues, causes, and realities which fit under the umbrella of the Jewish and Christian concept of shalom, a holistic concept that peace is more than the absence of war, but also includes the well-being of others. Physical health, mental and psychological healing, relationship building are essentials to shalom. A recent honoree of this award, our Indigenous sister Sharon Day, several years ago, showed us a peacemaking path when she walks alongside our rivers and lakes, praying for them and giving thanks. Today's honorees teach us to make peace with the soil, the land. As climate chaos and changes remind us that what we do and value affects all creation, peacemaking with our earth becomes more and more essential. Dan and Margaret help show us the way to learn to live in harmony with both abundance and scarcity in nature. They are not only friends, but mentors. They are prophets who call us to reassess our values, our lifestyles, our relationships. It's not essential that Hawkinson Honorary Award recipients embrace the same radical faith and practice of Vince Hawkinson. We honor and recognize that the values and practices of our honorees come from many, many sources. However, with Dan and Margaret, there seems to be a commonality with that same deep, abiding Christian faith that they share with the namesake of this honorary award. And embracing a theology of abundance, yet with a discipleship of conservation. A commitment to inclusion, yet tempered with discernment. An embrace of compassion, yet with a practice of discipline. For more than 30 years, they have incarnated the call to be peacemakers with nature and our earth. For this we are thankful, and we honor them today.
Thank you, Steve. I call on Reverend Eric Huckey to present the award.
Little did I know when we first started out 35 years ago that I would be here today. Little did I know that we would find people every year to receive scholarships who are totally outstanding and people who would receive our honorary award. No shortage, and yet the newspapers are filled with stories of people causing problems and trouble, and nobody lifts up the people who are doing the great things that are happening, and that's why I am so privileged to award our honorary award this year to Margaret Pennings and Dan Gunther. Let me read you briefly what this little plaque says. As recipients of the 2024 Honorary Award, Margaret Pennings and Dan Gunther, for their commitment to promote peace and justice in their community and throughout the world, we especially recognize their continuing efforts to practice good stewardship of the land and honor our deep commitment to the earth and all of God's creation by listening to the needs of the land and finding solutions to feed ourselves without destroying the planet, learning to be better stewards of the fragile ecosystem that supports life, teaching and mentoring others to care for the earth, and promoting the ideals of community-supported agriculture at the Common Harvest Farm since 1989.
This is indeed an honor for both of us. And I'm going to share a reflection that Margaret and I have written together, and then Margaret is going to end by reading a poem. So thank you, Steve, for that humbling introduction. You and Christine have been important mentors for us in this work of peacemaking for more than 30 years, and we thank you for that. We'd also like to thank our daughters, Annie and Grace, and our son-in-law, Matt, who are here today. And we'd like to acknowledge our son, William, who could not be here today. I'd also like to personally thank my parents and siblings for their support and encouragement, and they are participating by live stream today. A special thanks to all of the farm members who are here today. Whether you've been part of our farm for 1 year or more than 30 years, or if you have contributed to the Sharing the Harvest Fund to help distribute fresh, organic food to those in need, please raise your hand and identify yourself as part of this community. Thank you. Well, you have been partners with us in this important work of cultivating community through soil stewardship. Thank you for the simple but radical act of eating mindfully and working with us to create a model of how to care for a small piece of this beautiful creation. Thank you to the Hawkinson Foundation for recognizing that peacemaking takes many forms, that kneeling in reverence on the holy ground beneath our feet qualifies as peacemaking. This annual event over these many years has been one of the most hopeful and inspirational things we attend every year. And hope is certainly in short supply these days. We carry the burden of yet another unsettling election year, the constant weight of wars and the threat of war, the erosion of our democracy, civic institutions, and fraying social fabric of our country. And we don't have to look far to see the faces of injustice, discrimination, neglect, and conflict all around us. But some injustices are not easy to recognize. The war on the land is an example of a low-intensity conflict being waged against nature and the biological foundations of life on this planet. The war on the land is cloaked in the narrative of feeding the world. The war on the land is hidden behind patented life forms, intensive energy inputs, and the illusion of abundance. The war on the land is sadly being waged in nearly every corner of the globe, including close to home here, where in northern Minnesota, despite all we know about our changing climate, mature pine forests are being clear-cut to make more room for irrigated potatoes. The casualties of this war on the land are often unseen and out of sight. Declining global insect populations due to the indiscriminate use of systemic insecticides, where pollinators and beneficial insects are seen as mere collateral damage. or undocumented workers who live and work in the shadows with limited rights and few options for living a life of dignity. Or the injustice of an economic system that keeps farmers buried in debt in support of our cheap food policy. The family farms, like the one that Vince Hawkinson grew up on in Scandia, Minnesota, are increasingly relics of a bygone era. And along with it, the deep stewardship of living within the natural limits of the land have been lost to the technological advances of modern chemistry and plant genetics. Humility has given way to hubris. Animal husbandry has given way to pushing animals and biological systems to their limits. And it's not always clear how to navigate within our food system. As Wendell Berry articulated, eating is a political act. 3 times a day, we get to vote for what kind of a food system we want. And yet, amidst all of the illusion of abundance, it's becoming increasingly difficult to make choices that are good for the land and the ecological web of life forms that have an equal right to God's creation. One of the founders of the modern conservation movement, Aldo Leopold, said it well. We need to begin to see ourselves as plain and ordinary citizens of a larger biological community with which we share the land. Being peacemakers on the land requires us to more deeply immerse ourselves in the mysteries of growth and decay as the natural and necessary cycles of life. The longer we farm, the more it becomes clear that we are not going to bioengineer our way out of our current ecological crisis. Feeding ourselves will require learning that the health and well-being of all humanity is directly tied to the health and vitality of our soil. Each season, we are reminded anew that stewardship and care of the land would not be possible without a community of people to take this important work on with us. Peacemaking in all its varied expressions is about working together to create a more just and peace-filled world for the benefit of all. Peacemaking is believing against all odds that there is another way. If Vince Hawkinson were here today, he may not recognize the new expressions of injustice we face in our time, but he certainly would know that our response should be to boldly pursue peacemaking in all we do. As he preached countless times from this pulpit, he would encourage us to love our neighbors and never stop working for peace and justice. We share this honorary award with farmers and gardeners everywhere who care for the land and refuse to accept the prevailing thought that the natural world is to be subdued and conquered. We share this honor with our farm members who year after year trust in the goodness of the earth. And we share this honor with those who believe that humanity has the capacity to heal and repair the land for future generations of peacemakers.
I'd like to read you one of my favorite poems called Blackbirds by Julie Caldwaller Staub. I am 52 years old and have spent truly the better part of my life out of doors. But yesterday, I heard a new sound above my head, a rustling, ruffling quietness in the spring air. And when I turned my face upward, I saw a flock of blackbirds rounding a curve I didn't know was there. And the sound was simply all those wings, just feathers against air, against gravity, and such a beautiful winning, the whole flock taking a long, wide turn as if of one body and one mind. How do they do that? Oh, if we lived only in human society with its cruelty and fear, its apathy and exhaustion, what a puny existence that would be. But instead, we live and move and have our being here in this curving and soaring world, so that when every now and then mercy and tenderness triumph in our lives, and when even more rarely we manage to unite and move together toward a common good, we can think to ourselves, ah, yes, this is how it's meant to be.
It truly is our joy to celebrate the reception of this award with you, Margaret and Dan. Thank you for your life of witness and your passion for the soil and for the helping us to see and know again how it is that we are so deeply connected and how we are called to be peacemakers on our knees in the soil. Thank you. We are blessed by your ministry, your stewardship, your generosity, and your prophetic message. And congratulations again to the 2024 Scholarship Award winners. Thank you for your ministry and passion and witness in God's world. As you likely know, the Hawkinson Fund relies solely on donations to continue the work and supporting leaders in this holy work. You are invited to give generously to the Hawkinson Fund as you are able. On the back of the program is a QR code that will take you to the giving page if you are of that way of being in the world. If you're more of a, give me an envelope, I prefer that. And I have a checkbook. We have some giving stations, one right out in the entryway in the narthex. There'll be one downstairs during the reception as well. If you do write a check, we ask that you write it out to Grace University Lutheran Church, but put in the memo line Hawkinson Fund, and it will go directly to that fund. Thank you all for your support. I'm hoping Jayanthi is still in the house? No? Okay. Maybe we could close out. Maybe I'll call on. All right. When there's musicians in the room, in the house, we're going to close out with a song. But before we do that, know that there is a reception downstairs in the community room for you for our ongoing conversation and connection. You can get that way through an elevator if you need that, or stairs out this door and directly down, or you can kind of wind your way down the stairs that way, and you'll eventually find our community room. The amazing food for the reception is from Common Harvest Farm. So that bounty that has been prepared by the Genthner Pennings family, thank you so much for doing that as another way in which you are serving and the graciousness of your hospitality for us. A quick note about parking. If you parked in the Grace Garage, there is a code on your way out the door. There's an orange bright form that you can see the code there. You can take a picture of it on your phone so you remember to get in through the door down there. If you parked in the hospital ramp, we have vouchers on your way out as well. So thank you all for coming to the Hawkinson 2024 Awards and for your shared passion of creating a peaceable world where all God's beloved thrive. May it be so. So before we sing, receive this prayer, this blessing, this benediction. May God bless you and keep you and fill you. And may you remember that we are all called to continue in the holy and redemptive work of love and healing, of justice making and peace tending in our lives, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, our cities, and in God's world. Amen. And now I'm going to call on my friends Tom Witt and Mary Preuss on an impromptu singing moment to close us out in song. They are professionals. They've done this once or twice before.
We ask that you would look for the songbook that's right there in your pew. Oh, good.
Somebody's hurting my
The reception awaits.